It had been a long time since anyone had seen the pampered heiress of the coastal elite. Seizing the opportunity, I couldn't resist spinning a web of lies to lure her, a girl who had lost both her memory and her sight, back to my home. Every day, I teased her into giving me a kiss in exchange for a meal. The young mistress was constantly driven to blushing fits and a racing heart, branding me a scoundrel at every turn. But eventually, her powerful family tracked us down to reclaim their own. I fled into the night immediately, only to be knocked unconscious at the harbor. When I finally came to, my hands were bolted to the headboard and my eyes were tightly bandaged. She leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to my lips, and whispered, "Can I stay here tonight?" The rusted door of the rented room groaned loudly as it swung open. The person inside started, curling themselves tighter into the duvet. I flipped the switch, the light flickering to life. "It's just me," I said. Recognizing my voice, she slowly poked her head out. "Serafina," I called softly. "You're home so late today," she complained. I ignored her protest and brought over a cup of warm milk tea. "I bought this specifically for you." Her eyes were bandaged, leaving her in darkness, but her indignation was plain to see. She turned her head away, pursing her lips in a silent pout. "Don't be like that. You're so beautiful, but pouting like that will make you lose your charms." I sat on the edge of the bed, coaxing her with practiced patience. Sweet words flowed from my mouth with effortless grace, skills I had honed entirely because of her. Still, the girl on the bed remained unmoved. I flashed a wicked grin. "If you don't stop being angry, I'm going to kiss you." She stiffened, and with great reluctance, she slowly turned her face back toward me. 10 minutes later, the bedsheets were a tangled mess after a brief, frantic struggle. The milk tea had spilled onto the floor. Serafina was both flushed and furious, her lips swollen and red. You broke your word again." Satisfied, I stood up and tucked the blanket around her, laughing like a true rogue. "Is this really your first time meeting me, Serafina?" "You scoundrel," she hissed under her breath. The insult only made my heart swell with joy. "Stay still, I need to apply your medicine. Honestly, it's not like it's the first time. Why do you still resist so much?" She lay there helplessly, forced to endure my touch. When I accidentally brushed against a sensitive spot, she gritted her teeth and snapped, "Not there." "Oh, my mistake," I teased, intentionally lingering. Before turning off the lamp, I reached out and gave her sleeve a gentle tug. "I want to hold you while we sleep tonight. Is that okay?" Serafina's face turned a deep, instant crimson. I understand." She hesitated, but I didn't wait. I pulled back the covers, climbed into bed, and wrapped my arm around her waist. After a soft goodnight, I closed my eyes and drifted off. Beside me, the girl remained frozen in place, too flustered to move an inch. Much later, a bitter, self-deprecating laugh echoed through that cramped, decaying rented room. I had found Serafina in a filthy basement. At first, I didn't even recognize the woman huddled in the corner, covered in blood. The price tag hanging from her neck felt like a sick joke, because this was Serafina White, the only daughter of the White family. To call her a rich socialite was an understatement. She was the crown jewel of one of the wealthiest dynasties in the harbor city. I had only encountered her 3 times before. The first time was when my then-girlfriend, Tiffany, told me she wanted me to meet some friends. Serafina was the last to arrive. She had the air of an aloof, untouchable princess, impeccably clean, refusing the tea offered by others, and saying very little. She simply sat in the best seat in the room, focused on playing Candy Crush on her phone. Back then, I had whispered to Tiffany, "Does she not like outsiders like me?" Tiffany just smiled, long accustomed to it. "It's not that she doesn't like you, Julian." I was curious, but knowing our status was worlds apart, I didn't dare strike up a conversation. The second time was in a hotel elevator. I had just caught Tiffany cheating on me, and my left cheek still burned from the slap she'd given me. Her cruel words were still ringing in my head. "Don't think that just because you're associated with someone like me, you can wiggle your way into high society. It's pathetic. In our eyes, you're nothing but a toy for entertainment. I'm telling you, once you step out of this hotel tonight, don't ever expect to hold your head up in this city again." When I finally snapped back to reality, the elevator chimed, and the doors slid open. Serafina, who had been looking at her phone, happened to glance up at me. It was only then I realized this was the exclusive VIP elevator. Our eyes met for a few seconds before she spoke first. "Which floor?" Even though we were strangers, I didn't want to be seen in such a pathetic state. I prepared to turn away and take the stairs, but she spoke matter-of-factly. That woman with the surname Zhang seems to have called quite a few people to block the entrance. The man Tiffany was involved with was a third-tier celebrity. She was terrified I'd talk, and if I were caught, I knew more threats would follow. I quickly stepped into the elevator and muttered a thank you. As Serafina reached past me to press the button, I caught a glimpse of her arm. It was covered in scars, both large and small. Some were so deep they looked as though they had been stitched together with primitive needle and thread. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, but I didn't make a sound. As the elevator descended, Serafina broke the silence first. If you had listened to me sooner, it wouldn't have come to this. I looked at her in confusion. Had she ever even spoken to me before? She stood tall, nearly as tall as I was. With a look that was simultaneously innocent and guiltless, she blinked and said, I dropped so many hints. That day, that Tiffany woman was constantly trying to curry favor with me. Wasn't my attitude toward her clear enough? She isn't a good person. I could only respond with silence. The third time I saw her was on the news. Her family empire had collapsed, torn apart by severe internal infighting. Their skyscrapers had fallen, triggering a domino effect of ruin. In the video, Serafina was caught in a sudden, brutal car accident, covered in blood, her fate unknown. I went looking for her, but aside from the bloodstains at the scene, she seemed to have evaporated from the face of the earth. I even went to Tiffany to pry for information. She showed her true colors, reveling in the misfortune of others. That brat is definitely dead, she sneered. By now, even her bones have probably been gnawed clean by dogs. No one knew that a month after the incident, I would find Serafina again in a cramped basement in a remote, foreign land. Life is truly a miracle. Driven by a sudden whim to travel the world, I had been pickpocketed. While chasing the thief, I accidentally stumbled into that basement, and that was where my bond with Serafina truly began. Perhaps due to the accident, she had lost both her memory and her sight. Despite her beauty, once she lost her labor value, she was sold off multiple times until eventually, no one cared anymore. There was a cheap price tag hanging from her rustic cage. The girl was curled in the deepest corner, motionless. Her arms were covered in scars that had only just begun to close. Anyone who saw her couldn't help but sigh in pity. If I had been even a day later and no one had bought her, she would have been shipped off to an even more desolate place. I used the last of the money in my bank account to bring her home. Serafina, that was her name. It took me 3 days just to get her to remember it. As for her background, I fabricated a story. I told her we were childhood sweethearts who had lost our families and had always depended on each other to survive. At first, she was incredibly wary. She would knock over her medicine, refuse to eat, and lie silently on the bed without uttering a single word. The doctor said these were signs of deep depression. I adjusted the doctor's collar, then turned to her and spoke in a soft voice. Serafina, I lied to you. We aren't childhood sweethearts. Her eyes were truly beautiful. It was a tragedy they could no longer see. As if I had made a final resolution, I leaned down and kissed her lips. I lied to her again, saying, the truth is, I've been secretly in love with you for a long time. You're the woman I tricked into coming back with me. I didn't stop there, pouring out teasing words and provocations, deliberately trying to get a rise out of her. Before we eat, I need to kiss you until I've had my fill. 1 kiss for 1 meal. Slowly, even a stubborn stone like Serafina was worn down by my pestering until she finally spoke. The first thing she ever called me was a scoundrel. There was a sedative in her milk tea, so Serafina didn't wake despite my movement. Suppressing a wave of regret, I tucked her in for the last time and whispered softly, Goodbye, Serafina. The door clicked shut, and the room fell into a long, heavy silence. The girl on the bed slowly reached up and unraveled the white bandages from her eyes, revealing a pair of stunning, pearl-like eyes. However, the owner of those eyes looked anything but happy. She stared coldly at the empty room and spat out a single word. Liar. I dragged my suitcase out of the building and stood by the roadside as a taxi pulled up. The driver asked curiously, Heading to the harbor this late? Something urgent. I kept my head down, staring at my phone. Very urgent. I'm being hunted. The driver jumped, slamming his foot on the gas and speeding up significantly. In a way, I wasn't lying. The White family had found us. At the time, I was uneasy and had stubbornly refused to reveal Serafina's location. They threw countless threats my way. Serafina is a vengeful person. If she recovers her memory and finds out how you deceived her, she will never let you go. You saved her, and for that we thank you. But do not push your luck or dream of things you shouldn't. We have already chosen a fiancé for her. And you, Mr. Chen, think about what you could possibly offer her right now. That final sentence struck a nerve. Thinking it over, I realized I shouldn't be the one holding her back. So, I sent the family her location but didn't plan on waiting around. After all, if I stayed until they arrived, even my good intentions could be twisted into something ugly. It was better to leave on my own. I didn't even bother with a farewell. The night wind at the harbor was fierce, and the docks were strangely deserted. It was almost just me. Just as I began to feel that something was wrong, the taxi driver from earlier stepped out of his car. "Sir, you forgot something." I started to turn around, but a sharp, searing pain exploded at the back of my neck. My consciousness vanished instantly. Damn it, I've been played. I slept for a long time, occasionally drifting into a hazy state of awareness. But every time I felt a needle prick the back of my hand, I would sink back into the darkness. Don't go too heavy on the dose. We still need him functional. It was a man's voice, sounding quite young. Someone asked, "How long should we keep him under?" The man paused for a moment before replying, "Let's wait and see what she says." Drowsiness washed over me once more, and I only managed to catch the mention of her. Could these people be Serafina's enemies? If so, I was definitely done for. This whole operation lacked even a shred of honor. I swore to myself that once I woke up, I would find whoever was behind this and deal with them. I don't know how long I slept, but when I finally regained consciousness, my body didn't feel heavy. In fact, I felt strangely refreshed. The only problem was that my eyes were tightly bandaged, and the silence around me was eerie. The bed beneath me was incredibly soft. I tried to sit up, but the cold clink of metal echoed from my wrists. Great. I'm actually chained up. The door creaked open, and someone stepped into the room. "Oh, you're awake?" It was a young maid. She began to gently wipe my hands with a warm towel. "Who are you people? Why am I being held here?" I asked, trying to sound composed, though my heart was racing with panic. This was supposed to be the modern era. If this were ancient times, I'd have assumed I was being kidnapped to be a forced groom in some mountain fortress. The maid worked meticulously, even helping me take a sip of water. "Don't worry, this isn't a dangerous place," was all she said. She refused to reveal anything else. As she prepared to leave, I suddenly groaned in pain, clutching my stomach. In reality, I had pinched my thighs so hard that tears actually welled up. The maid panicked, reaching for the call button to summon a doctor. I stopped her quickly. "No, it's fine. I just really need to use the bathroom. You gave me so much water earlier, and it's hitting me now." She hesitated for a moment, but eventually relented. She removed my blindfold. I stared, momentarily stunned. The room was lavishly furnished and massive. Even the bathroom in this place was more luxurious than my entire dilapidated rented apartment. My wrist, however, remained handcuffed to the headboard. Whoever thought of this was truly creative. The maid led me to the bathroom, refusing to leave my side. I stood at the door, feeling awkward. I can't go with someone standing right there. Can you wait outside?" She looked uneasy but warned me, "Fine. Go ahead, but I'll be right here." I smiled and shut the door. I scanned the bathroom. The good news, no cameras. The bad news, we were on the 8th floor. The maid knocked on the door. "Are you finished yet?" Having no other choice, I gave up on my escape for now and began plotting another move. The maid was attentive, leading me back to the bed and restoring me to my original, restrained state. Before leaving, she spoke. "The mistress said she will come to see you tonight after she finishes her business." I felt a wave of suspicion. The mistress? Who the hell is she? I have a bad habit. If I think too deeply for too long, I tend to fall asleep. Because the bed was so comfortable, I forgot my current predicament and imagined I was back in my old room. Rolling over subconsciously, I murmured a name in my sleep. "Serafina? It's me." A hand reached out and clasped mine. I jolted awake. Damn it. Hearing her voice was one thing, but the physical sensation of her touch told me this was no dream. "Are you happy, darling? It's really me." Serafina lunged forward, throwing her arms tightly around me. The scent of her perfume filled my lungs. It was the same brand I had once grit my teeth to afford as a gift for her. Of course, compared to her status as the heiress of the White family, this perfume was pitifully cheap. "Why is it you?" I grumbled, trying to hoist my knee up to push her off. But she easily pinned me down. From above, a low, soft laugh vibrated in the air. "Are you surprised? Or are you scared? You look more like the latter." "What kind of game are you playing now?" I muttered. "Julian," she said slowly, her voice dripping with irony. "Aren't these all the little tricks you loved to play back then?" A wave of guilt instantly washed over me. It was true. Back then, relying on the fact that she couldn't see, she was nothing more than a helpless puppy in my eyes, completely under my thumb. In those days, I had used a mix of coaxing and threats to make her do things that were difficult to speak of. Back then, she had been so stubborn. Even in a submissive position, she had bluntly declared, "Julian, just you wait. Sooner or later, you're going to regret this." Retribution had come fast. I started to panic, trying to negotiate cautiously. "How about we do this another day? I have things to do, very urgent things." I guessed her eyes were fully healed now. And the Serafina who had returned to the White family was certainly not someone to be trifled with. Knowing my own limits, I only hoped we could part ways in peace. That would be a lucky enough outcome for me. But I had underestimated the severity of the situation. More importantly, I had misjudged her resolve. "What could be so urgent that you want to leave me?" she asked with a chilling smile. "Julian, a man must take responsibility for the things he says." Old memories flooded back at her words, making my face turn a deep crimson. I was just talking nonsense while I was drunk." I stammered, trying to explain. She didn't bother listening. She leaned down and silenced me with a kiss. Everything I had taught her before, she was now applying with total mastery. She was even more skilled than I was. Just as I was beginning to lose myself in the sensation, she suddenly stopped and whispered against my neck. "My love, what role are we playing tonight? Can you stay here? I'm all alone at home." Hearing those words would melt anyone's bones, let alone mine. Of course, the performance couldn't last. In the middle of it all, her phone rang. The caller ID read, "The old bastard." Serafina was clearly displeased, rejecting the call 3 times before finally answering. "You've got quite a lot of free time on your hands, don't you?" The man's voice on the other end was cold and ageless. He clearly knew Serafina was spending her time visiting me. But she had only just returned to the family fold. A mountain of work was waiting for her. Despite her irritation, she reluctantly stood up and straightened my duvet, her voice a mix of concern and a sharp warning. "Don't even dream of escaping. This place is crawling with cameras, and guards are stationed at every exit. You won't get far." I remembered Tiffany mentioning once that Serafina had gone through some traumatic events in her childhood, leaving her personality a bit fractured. When it came to resolving specific issues, she could be quite extreme. To put it bluntly, she was a bit obsessive, borderline pathological. At the time, I thought it was just a rumor. I never expected it to be the truth. Back in our rented room, she had hidden it so well. Her attitude then made it seem like I was the one forcing her. Still uneasy, Serafina gave a final order to the servant outside the door. "If I return and he is gone, you don't need to bother showing your face ever again." It sounded terrifying. Not long after she left, I heard muffled voices outside. It sounded like someone important had arrived. The servant obediently opened the door to let a man in. I was sprawled lazily on the bed, fiddling with an iPad Serafina had specifically brought to keep me entertained. The game was addictive, so I only glanced up briefly to acknowledge him. "Hello." The man retracted his judgmental gaze. He looked friendly enough as he introduced himself. "I am Mark Jiang, her future fiancé." That voice. I began to take a closer look at the man standing before me. He was dressed in high-end couture, looking every bit the wealthy heir, just like Serafina. He clearly grew up in a world made of money. He also looked like someone who had read way too many overbearing CEO novels. A classic scene suddenly popped into my head, and I felt a flicker of amusement. Does he want me to leave Serafina? As the thought crossed my mind, I started calculating how much he'd have to pay me. Given Serafina's family status, $1 million would be a reasonable ask, right? If I asked for any less, she'd probably be offended. Mark Jiang glanced toward the door. The servant caught the hint immediately and closed it, leaving us in private. He then sat on the sofa opposite me, striking the pose of a seasoned negotiator. "Mr. Chen, I am here to make a deal with you. I'm not here to ask. I'm here to inform. Feeling a bit numb, I sat up straight, curious to hear his pitch. Mr. Chen, I have liked Serafina since we were very young. Back then, I was young and naive. I pestered my parents and her family constantly, trying to secure an engagement. To everyone else, she was like pure gold, utterly radiant. Even the name Serafina was a title bestowed upon her by the elders to signify her purity. To compare her with the other children in the family, I've heard countless legends about her. She's a genius, always top of her class. She races cars. On the track, she's absolutely insane. Yet in reality, she's the perfect, polite lady, a natural at power dynamics who handles business as if it were child's play. Think about it. She's Serafina White, not yet 20, and people everywhere bow to her. I didn't understand why Mark was telling me all this. He raised an eyebrow as if expecting me to be too intimidated to love her anymore. The White family, they all have issues, Mark said, a flash of disgust crossing his eyes. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw her press a lit cigarette into a man's arm while she was berating him. Honestly, I thought there must have been a reason behind it. I believed that even if Serafina didn't drink or smoke in public, she had likely dealt with some very dark people. When Mark spoke, his voice carried a hint of bitter resentment, as if the person he once admired and loved had been exposed to him as something unacceptably filthy. Mr. Chin, I didn't think it was a big deal at first, but then Serafina caused a scene that nearly tore the White family apart. Hearing those words made my chest tighten. No wonder she always wore long sleeves or cardigans, never letting her arms show. It explained why her arms were covered in scars when I saw her in that elevator. Mr. Chin, that woman mocks herself by hurting her own body until she's covered in blood. Because of her rare blood type, she was almost beyond saving once. I snuck in to see her. She was pinned to a hospital bed by several people, being pumped full of sedatives. Those scars, they're hideous, just like her soul. Serafina's psyche is warped. She isn't a normal human being anymore.
He leaned in.
I know she likes you. That's why, when you tried to run away, I was the one who stopped you. You can't leave. You have to stay and comfort her for me. My family wants to force me to marry her in a few days.
You won't lose out by staying.
Serafina might be broken, but if you say the right things and coax her a bit, I'm sure she'll listen to you. All so we can destroy this engagement. I let out a soft, cold laugh. Mark looked confused, not understanding what was so funny. I rubbed my aching neck, stood up, and walked over to him with my arms crossed. I looked him dead in the eye and smiled. You are so incredibly conceited. I'm laughing at your high and mighty attitude. I'm laughing because you mistake a passing curiosity for love. I'm laughing because you act without considering the consequences. You were the one who proposed this engagement, and now you want to be the one to shatter it. I'm laughing because you treat her like an object. Mark stood up, fuming. What do you know? What right do you have to talk to me like that? I fired back. A human being should have a conscience. Based on what I know, the Jiang family has exploited this engagement for years to reap massive profits. Perhaps you should return everything you've gained from her family before opening your mouth about calling off the wedding. Mark found himself speechless, unable to offer a single rebuttal. Finally, he stormed out in a fit of rage, without looking back. As the room fell silent, I felt a sense of profound confusion. Who exactly is the real Serafina White? In the middle of the night, while I was fast asleep, someone began intentionally tickling my face.
It was irritating.
I opened my eyes in a huff, only to be met by a pair of tender, longing eyes. Serafina gently tapped the tip of my nose. Sleeping all the time isn't fun. Let me take you out to find some real excitement. I froze, staring at her blankly. She had just showered. Her damp hair hung loosely over her brows. The scent of her body wash and shampoo was identical to the products I used to buy. Serafina, I started, but the words died in my throat. I had so many questions, like the origin of those scars, but as she lowered her head and waited quietly for me to speak, I couldn't do it. Her eyes were so clear and beautiful that the interrogation felt impossible. Instead, I gave a soft laugh and asked, "How are you this beautiful?" She looked flustered, averting her gaze as a deep crimson flooded her cheeks. Stammering, she urged me to get up and follow her. The White Estate was a revelation. It was my first time seeing it, and it was, how should I put it, opulent beyond belief. It truly lived up to its reputation as a top-tier clan of the Hong Kong elite. Serafina walked beside me, giving a simple explanation of the villa's layout. However, my eyes inadvertently stopped at a dark attic where no lights were burning. "That's where my mother lives," Serafina said calmly. I realized then that I had never heard a word about her parents. Even with the massive upheaval currently rocking her family, no one seemed to be addressing their situation. "Can I meet her?" I asked, but I sensed Serafina didn't want me dwelling on the subject. She quickly changed the topic. "If you like it here, you can change rooms every day. You wouldn't repeat a room for an entire year. Of course, if you don't like the design, I'll tear it down and rebuild it exactly how you want it." The night breeze turned chilly, and Serafina draped a circular shawl over my shoulders. "Julian, do you like this place?" she asked expectantly. But the peaceful atmosphere was shattered by a woman's blood-curdling scream. I jolted, my body tensing as I recognized the voice instantly. It was Tiffany. Serafina stood behind me, her voice cold and flat. "I've done my research. The woman named Tiffany is terrified of both heights and snakes. This setup suits her perfectly." I looked out to see Tiffany bound and suspended in midair, dangling about 10 meters above the water. In the pool below, countless snakes were writhing and slithering. It was an exceptionally cruel method of torture. Upon seeing me, Tiffany became even more hysterical, screaming at the top of her lungs. "Julian, you're the one behind this, aren't you? You're doing this to get revenge on me just because— No, you've used me. I won't let you get away with this." Tiffany shrieked. Serafina looked at her with a calm, chilling smile. "Don't be so anxious," she said softly. "She won't be doing anything to us anymore." Tiffany glared at Serafina with eyes full of pure hatred. "If you don't let me down right now, I'll make sure you never live another peaceful day." Feeling a wave of unease, I turned to Serafina. "Let her down. There's no need to take it this far." Under my insistence, the ropes were lowered. I reached out to help Tiffany up, but the moment she was within reach, she clawed viciously at my hand. Facing her blind rage, I could only close my eyes and bear it. About 10 minutes later, Tiffany was back on solid ground. She collapsed in pain, wailing and sobbing so loudly it was unbearable. However, her noise didn't last long. Someone quickly gagged her to prevent further disturbance. Serafina quietly took my hand, inspecting the scratch marks. "Next time," she said flatly, "remember to bring an iron rod. It'll save your hands the pain." I gave a weak smile. "Thanks, but I'm not looking to escalate things." The girl beside me went silent, her gaze heavy with displeasure. I didn't push further, though I knew deep down those snakes in the pool weren't just for show. I gently advised Serafina to change her methods, telling her not to get her hands dirty with people like this. She looked up at me.
"Fine.
But you have to tell me, what exactly was the deal between you and her?" In the end, Tiffany was hauled away by the police. Serafina had planned everything perfectly. She knew every dirty detail of the Zhang family's dealings. Trapping Tiffany had been as easy as breathing. Whatever happened next was the harvest of Tiffany's own seeds. It would likely take her years to claw her way out of the legal mess. As for the history between Tiffany and me, it was a dark, twisted tale. Years ago, my parents were killed in a car accident caused by a drunk driver. The driver's family had money and connections. They refused to take responsibility, tossing a paltry sum of money at me, claiming it was just enough to buy a burial plot. There was never an apology. The driver had sneered, throwing the cash in my face. "If you're willing to beg, I might consider throwing in a few thousand more." I was trembling with rage, gripping a wine bottle, and ready to strike back. But right then, a red wine bottle came flying out of nowhere, smashing directly into the driver's back. How bold, I thought. Tiffany had stepped through the spilled wine. She threw another unopened bottle down and mocked the driver with a sneer. "If I didn't know better, I'd think you were actually someone important in this city. You're pathetic." "What's so impressive about bullying a poor kid?" She turned back and spoke to the group of men standing behind her. I couldn't stand by and watch anymore. I only stepped in because I saw him about to cry. The crowd laughed, and one of them teased, "It's a rare sight to see Miss Tiffany take action like this." Another added, "Miss Tiffany has had her eye on this guy for a long time. She couldn't bear to see him mistreated." Truthfully, I can't say it was love. But back then, I felt as though I had found a savior when I had no one else. Subconsciously, I began to view her as a good person. Tiffany drove me home that day. Her way of pursuing someone was strategic, Never rushed, never messy. Before leaving, she secretly slipped a bank card with no PIN into my pocket, along with a scrap of paper containing her phone number. The relationship started in an ugly way, and it ended just as bitterly. She might have been driven by desire, a hidden agenda, or perhaps she was egged on by her friends. Regardless, I was still grateful that she reached out to help me at my lowest point. Suddenly, like a gentle breeze, Serafina pulled me into an embrace and whispered an apology for finding out the truth so late. I stroked her hair and smiled, calling her a little fool. My story is finished. What about yours? Serafina stiffened, slowly lifting her head to ask what I wanted to hear. She pulled up her sleeves, revealing the scars that still remained. Each time they nearly healed, they were cut open again, ensuring they would never fade. Her gaze shifted slightly. I looked down, remembering Mark's words about how hideous these scars were. In that moment, Serafina looked like a fallen deity, melancholy and silent. It felt as if time were reversing and she was standing in that cage again. I remembered seeing her imprisoned, unresponsive even to the sound of my footsteps. Back then, she was waiting for something. Serafina believed herself to be a monster. And they say monsters don't know how to love. I wanted to find out what love felt like, Julian. She was persistent in her search for that answer. You love me, don't you? On my third day at her house, I met someone, Serafina's father, a man who lived only in rumors. Few had ever seen Silas White's face. It was said that since his marriage, he almost never attended public events. After his wife passed away, he refused to see anyone at all, including his own daughter. Standing before me was a man who looked no older than 30, showing no signs of aging whatsoever. As he handed me a cup of tea, I couldn't help but marvel at the incredible genes of this family. I nodded slightly. Hello, Mr. White. Silas White remained composed, his expression unreadable. Do you want to marry her? The question caught me completely off guard. Suddenly, Mark John's warning flashed through my mind. Everyone in the White family is pathological. Today, Silas seemed intent on laying everything bare. He spoke at length about a dark, abnormal trait embedded in their family's bloodline, a psychological obsession that frequently spiraled into negative spirals. When it came to the people they cared about, they developed a frantic, uncontrollable fixation. It was a madness that didn't just wound others, it destroyed the person harboring it. When Serafina was a child, she was deeply traumatized. Her condition is even more severe than mine, Silas said, sipping his tea. He looked at me with haunting sincerity. So, have you thought it through? Do you truly want to leave her? Do you really not want to see her happy? Meanwhile, Serafina stayed at the office until nightfall. She had already dismantled half of the obstacles standing in her way. As for her family's betrayal, she couldn't have cared less. The recent upheaval had allowed her to purge the old guard once and for all. Now, no one could threaten her. Suddenly, a report came in from the villa. The master has returned. Serafina's face went cold. A sense of dread washed over her. Sure enough, when she checked, Julian was nowhere to be found. A servant informed her that her father had spoken with Julian for over an hour. Serafina knew exactly where to intercept them. Without a second's hesitation, she floored the accelerator, nearly slamming into a black Bugatti. The other car was forced to screech to a halt. Silas lowered his window, crossing his arms with a raised eyebrow. Angry, are we? Serafina slammed her car door shut and marched toward him. What did you say to him? Her face was twisted with a rare, raw fury. It seemed he had finally struck her weakest point. Silas stepped out of the car slowly. Father and daughter faced off, neither willing to yield an inch of ground. Do you finally feel the rage I felt all those years ago? Silas asked, a slow, manic smile spreading across his face. His eyes held a glimmer of madness. You destroyed her. Those 3 words caused Serafina to revert to a state of terrifying, icy calm. So, you let my man go? She asked, her voice dripping with mockery. That old man trick, how typical. You hated your daughter then. Your daughter hates you now. I suppose we're even. Without warning, a handgun appeared in Silas's hand. He pointed it directly at his daughter's heart. If you let me fire a single shot, I'll tell you where he is. Serafina knew his methods all too well. She didn't even flinch.
Fine, she said.
For Julian, I am willing to do anything. The servants watching from the sidelines devolved into a state of pure panic. The standoff between father and daughter had reached a lethal point. It was at that exact moment of maximum tension that I finally appeared. Freeze. At that moment, the look in Serafina's eyes shifted. She stood rooted to the spot, staring at me with a look of utter disbelief, whispering my name. I stepped forward, shielding her with my body. Sir, she is your daughter, I stated firmly. Silas White didn't lower his weapon. Instead, he tilted his head, speaking to the girl behind me. He truly is nothing like the others. His words sent a chill through me. My legs felt like jelly and fear clawed at my chest, but this time, I was determined to protect Serafina. How about I take you both with me? Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. The bullet didn't hit us, however. It slammed into the car beside us. Silas looked almost regretful, his hand trembling slightly as the shot went wide. Without another word, he spun the handgun with effortless grace and slowly climbed back into his car. The black Bugatti suited him perfectly, matching his arrogant smile and unpredictable nature. I couldn't even begin to imagine what he must have been like when he was Serafina's age. Beside me, Serafina pulled me close, her breathing ragged and frantic. You're insane. No, I replied, holding her tight. You're the one who needs to stay alive. She didn't move, her voice trembling. What use would I have for this life without you? Serafina, let's get married. She stopped cold, gripping my hands and looking me straight in the eyes. Do you realize what you're saying? Julian, you can joke about anything, but not this. I pulled her toward me and kissed her fiercely, intentionally biting her lip until it bled. The metallic taste of blood mingled between us. I pinned her against the hood of the car, my hands braced on either side of her, my gaze resolute. Serafina, we are getting married, I declared. I will love you so much that I'll make you fall in love with this world. A joyful smile broke across her face. She leaned in, kissed my forehead, and whispered softly, Thank you for loving me. Serafina and I didn't plan on a lavish wedding. We intended to invite only our closest friends. Even for the dress fitting, she took every precaution to ensure our safety. She had the boutique cleared out beforehand, then stepped outside to take a business call. A small army of bodyguards remained with me. I laughed, telling her she was being overly paranoid. But the moment I pulled back the dressing room curtain, my smile vanished. I was being kidnapped. It was a meticulously long-planned operation. To Serafina, these were familiar faces, people she had known for years. But now, they were her deadliest enemies. That brat is happy now, isn't she? A perfect little family, one of them spat. Meanwhile, we have no home to go back to. As it turned out, they were the ones Serafina had purged from the White family, the losers who had been kicked out and left with nothing but their grudges. If it weren't for Serafina's sudden return, the White family would have been swallowed whole by these people long ago. One of the men used a dagger to lift my chin, eyeing me up and down. You've got a bit of looks, I'll give you that. He let out a sinister laugh. It seems Serafina actually has some feelings for you. Good. That gives us more leverage to set stricter conditions. I let out a soft laugh, which only enraged him. What's so funny? I honestly didn't understand how they could be so naive. No matter how much Serafina liked me, she would never trade the entire White family legacy for a single person. What are you thinking about? They muttered among themselves. Then, a bald man stood up and glared at me threateningly. Just give me one of his fingers. That'll make everything clear soon enough. They pinned my hand down and raised the knife. Cold sweat poured down my face, and I found myself unable to even cry out for help. Suddenly, someone shouted, She's here. We were in an abandoned factory, surrounded by surveillance cameras. The monitors showed a sleek black Audi tearing toward the main entrance without a hint of hesitation. And Serafina was alone. I was on the second floor, bound hand and foot. They had injected me with a drug that left me completely drained of strength. Even standing up was a struggle. The group stood at the railing, looking down to begin the negotiations. Where is he? Serafina asked, leaning against her car door, her face a mask of icy calm. The bald man gripped his knife and smirked. If you had been a minute later, you'd be looking at one of his severed fingers. Serafina tightened her grip on her car keys. You know my temperament. If anything happens to him, I have no intention of leaving this place alive. If I die, none of you get out either. Her words sent a shiver down their spines. Release him. Some of the men began to waver. Maybe we should let him go. We just wanted our shares back. We didn't sign up for something this big. The bald man kicked them, roaring in anger. Are you seriously afraid of one blonde girl? Grab her. Soon, Serafina was surrounded, yet no one dared to make the first move. Miss, we were forced into this. Just nod your head, and we won't make things difficult. Mr. Chin will be fine. The bald man urged them to hurry. But at that moment, a massive explosion rocked the distance, leaving everyone stunned. No one had expected a move this big. Without changing her expression, Serafina held up her car key fob. Like I said, release him. She was playing a high-stakes game of chicken, and she was playing it brutally. This time, even the bald man was rattled. Don't worry, she's just bluffing. There wasn't enough time to plant bombs. Serafina glanced at him, her gaze unwavering. Not enough time? Then is this car enough? It turned out she had driven a car packed with explosives straight into the building. Aside from the bald man, everyone else lost their nerve and fled toward the exit to surrender. When Serafina spotted me on the second floor, her eyes darkened instantly. A blade was pressed firmly against my throat. One slight movement, and blood would spray. The bald man laughed manically. Serafina, I'm not afraid. After you kicked me out of the white family, I lost my wife, my children. I have nothing left. Life or death, I don't care. You care about this man, don't you? Then get on your knees. Kneel down and kowtow 3 times. Admit you were wrong and beg me to spare him. Ha ha ha. I shouted to her, my voice cold. Don't you dare kneel. Shut up. The blades sank deeper into my skin. I winced as the sharp pain flared. Serafina's expression shifted violently. At a distance of 5 meters, she didn't dare move forward. The bald man screamed, Kneel. Weren't you always so high and mighty? The sole heiress of the white family, the jewel of Harbor City. Everyone wants to be you. You have everything you want, but in reality, you're just a pathetic monster that nobody wants. Your mother died because of you. And now you want to ruin someone else? If I were Silas White, I would have stabbed you 1,000 times over by now. Serafina's face went rigid, her hanging arms slowly clenching into fists. Every word, every syllable transformed into a razor-sharp blade, each strike landing a fatal blow to her soul. I panicked, shouting through my strained voice, Don't you dare kneel. He won't do it. He's only here to humiliate you. Serafina listened to me. Before I could finish, Serafina's knees hit the floor. My heart shattered into a million pieces. The bald man barked impatiently, Keep going. She collapsed toward the ground, not daring to stand back up. I'm sorry, please, she whispered, her voice trembling. Spare him. I'm begging you. One kowtow, then another. Her forehead slammed against the hard concrete again and again until blood began to seep from her skin. This was Serafina White. She could lose her life, but her pride was supposed to be untouchable. Yet here she was, throwing it away for me. The bald man laughed so hard tears nearly pricked his eyes. You actually have a day like this. You actually have a day like this. He brandished another blade, his eyes gleaming with even more malice. Stab yourself through the leg. And remember, I said through. Without a second of hesitation, Serafina grabbed the blade. She drove it into her right thigh, a movement so swift I couldn't even scream before it was done. No! I roared. The pain was so intense the veins on Serafina's forehead bulged. Her eyes turned bloodshot as she struggled to prop herself up with her hands. The pool of blood on the floor was a blinding, vivid crimson. I sobbed, calling her name over and over, but she couldn't find the breath to speak. The bald man marched over and kicked her repeatedly, venting his years of rage. Scream. Why aren't you screaming? Ha. I love seeing you like this, lower than a dog. Serafina coughed up a spray of blood. He stepped on her hand, grinding his heel down until I heard the sickening crack of bone. He demanded she stay on her knees. I was weeping uncontrollably, begging her. Stand up. I'm fine, I promise. You can do this, Serafina, don't kneel. Get up, please get up. A sudden gunshot cut through the air, and the bald man's laughter died instantly. He had been shot in the hand. The immediate threat to my life vanished as the dagger fell. Moments later, the sound of sirens filled the air as the police swarmed the factory. Silas White ascended the stairs, his face a mask of terrifying, icy indifference. He pulled Serafina up roughly, then purposely ground his foot into the bald man's fresh bullet wound. Silas White, had no intention of interfering in this mess, he said, his voice cold enough to freeze the blood in the room. But you dare to touch my daughter. Do you have any idea what the ending to this story looks like? Silas whispered. Everyone else had been cleared out. Despite her injuries, Serafina refused to let go of me. She cupped my face with her trembling hands, gently brushing away my tears. It's okay, she whispered. I'm sorry I'm late. Don't be afraid. She coughed up more blood, staining half of her face a visceral crimson. When Silas tried to lead her to the hospital, she resisted. She was obsessed with checking every inch of me for injuries. I sobbed, unable to find my voice. Looking at her broken, battered body, I didn't even dare to touch her for fear of causing more pain. Let's go to the hospital, I pleaded. Please, can we just go? She nodded weakly before losing consciousness in my arms. We drove home later in a somber silence. Serafina and I decided to hold our wedding ceremony early. She still had some time to go before she was legally old enough to sign a marriage certificate. Perhaps it was for the best. We used this time to go on a long honeymoon. She didn't have any specific destination in mind. Wherever you go, I follow, she told me. Whatever I liked, she grew to like. She had so few memories of the outside world, but I told her, it's okay. I'll teach you everything. On Serafina's birthday, I woke up early. Following a plan I had made a month in advance, I went out to personally buy ingredients, flowers, and gifts. But the moment I returned home, I felt a heavy shift in the atmosphere. The servants gasped in relief. You're finally back, Mr. Chen? Before they could finish, Serafina spun around. Still clutching her phone, she rushed toward me. Where were you? She demanded, her voice laced with the terror that I had been kidnapped again. I held up the bags, overflowing with gifts. It's your birthday today. But she couldn't bring herself to smile. She just clung to me, trembling. I don't need a birthday. I don't need any of it. What's wrong? Is something the matter? Only you are my medicine, Julian, she whispered. No, it's more than that. I simply cannot exist without you. Serafina began to recount her past. I was born into this family, a fact that was both a blessing and a curse. Before I was 10 years old, I had never even met my mother. My father always said the same thing about her. She is sleeping. You must not disturb her. I didn't go to school. More accurately, I had almost zero contact with the outside world. When I was little, I couldn't stand the isolation anymore, so I snuck out. It wasn't actually that far from our estate when I ran into a group of children my age. The strange thing was, even though I had never met them before, they already knew exactly who I was. Every child was afraid of me, or more accurately, they hated me. Don't talk to her. She's a monster. By the time the White family found me, I was hiding inside a drainage pipe. No matter who called out, I refused to budge. Eventually, they brought my father. A man of limited patience, he gave me exactly 3 seconds. If you don't come out, I'll have them fill this place with cement. You can stay in there forever. He was a man of his word. When I finally crawled out and tried to reach for his hand, he recoiled instantly, his gaze freezing. Don't touch me. I had forgotten. He detested being touched without permission. I looked up at him and asked, why do they call me a monster? My father's face remained expressionless. Because that is what you are. And so am I. The first time I saw my mother, it was because I had secretly followed Silas White to find her. She was lying quietly on a hospital bed, truly asleep. A ghostly voice hissed from behind me. Don't wake her. I was struck unconscious and carried away. My mother was moved to a different location, and I could never find her again. Silas wouldn't say a word. He only told me, I despise those who are disobedient. You should consider yourself lucky that her blood flows through your veins. At 11 years old, I finally saw my father for what he was, a madman. But fortunately, I had planted a tracking device and found my mother once more. This time, she was awake, but she didn't seem to recognize me. Who are you, kid? How do you know Silas White? She told me Silas was ill, a sickness that had no cure. Our conversation was cut short by the sound of footsteps. I hid in the wardrobe and watched Silas enter the room. He seemed like a different person. He was actually smiling. Elena, are you still angry? I was wrong. I won't do it again, all right? In front of my mother, Silas White was like a dog begging for affection. Tragically, no matter how many soft words he whispered, he didn't receive a single glance in return. My mother's eyes remained vacant as she spoke. Silas, I want to go home. In an instant, The tenderness in his eyes vanished, replaced by the cold persona I knew so well. Slowly, almost elegantly, he wrapped his hands around her throat. Elena, you are only permitted to think of me. Later, I broke into my father's study. I had heard the elders mention that it was once the place where my mother stayed. Eventually, that attic became a forbidden zone where no one dared venture. Inside, I found countless drawings my mother had made in her fury. I also found Silas White's handwritten diaries. My mother had been bought by him. In his diary, it was written that their encounter was never fair from the start. He was merely a guest in a VIP seat, while she was an object for others to admire, a literal showpiece. Out of sheer obsession, he spent half his fortune to buy her freedom. Initially, he treated her as a secret mistress. But when she asked to leave, Silas White revealed his inhumanity. He demanded she leave a child behind as a bargaining chip before he would agree. And after that, he broke his promise. He hid her away, telling her the outside world was too dangerous, that she was only safe by his side. Silas never knew that I used to sneak off to see my mother constantly. She never truly accepted my presence. I cannot have his child. You must be one of his accomplices. Go away, she would scream.
It was terrifying.
Once, she smashed a glass cup over my head. Blood streamed down from my brow. I smiled bitterly. Mother. She stared at me in disbelief, her eyes turning bloodshot and her lips trembling. The next second, she fell to her knees before me, kowtowing repeatedly. I beg of you, please spare me. I am your mother. I carried you for 10 months. I gave you life. Can you give it back to me? She knelt on the shards of broken glass, stripped of every ounce of dignity. Later, I was hung up in a basement and tortured to reveal her location. Silas White nearly turned the entire harbor city upside down. His eyes were bloodshot, his sanity gone.
He pointed a gun at me.
Give her back to me. Don't think for a second I won't kill you. A shot rang out, and I fell into a pool of blood. As I collapsed, word arrived that they had found my mother. But she was a corpse. By some miracle, I was saved and survived after 3 days. In the past, Silas was so arrogant he looked down on everyone. He had made countless enemies who envied his status and loathed his cruelty. He was so cold and calculating that he never left an opening, so they waited in the shadows, lurking for a chance. Finally, they caught my mother when she was alone. They threw her into the sea, where she drowned. It was I who caused her death. On the day of the funeral, I didn't dare show my face. I smashed everything in my hospital room, found a sharp piece of glass, and slashed my wrists. I cut once, they saved me once. It seemed even the heavens detested my cheap, worthless life. Silas White eventually dragged me out and forced me down into a freezing tank of water. He gripped my collar, his eyes overflowing with hatred. I truly want to kill you, but your life was given by her. So, you must live. I lived like a walking corpse, hiding behind a mask. It was truly exhausting. Perhaps my acting was just too perfect. I eventually escaped the shackles of my past. Many praised me for being a good child. They admired me, saying so many people loved me. But no one knew. All that perfection was a lie. It was just that I had lied so much, even I began to believe it was true. In front of others, I was cold and aloof to the point of being too lazy to utter another word. In reality, I loved alcohol. There were times I'd get so drunk I'd collapse in a bar. When I woke up, I'd just keep drinking. No sleep, no rest. I drank until my stomach bled. It was essentially self-inflicted harm. Then there was a young man, still quite youthful, but very bold. He spiked my drink. He gripped my hand tightly and said he could give me all the love I needed. It turned out he had been stalking me for a long time. He must have overheard the things I muttered when I was drunk. Your mother doesn't want you. I want you. Serafina, I will never leave you. He thought that by saying those words, he had already won. He didn't realize that I was simply weighing in my mind whether I should rip out his tongue or sew his eyes shut. I truly didn't know what to say. I just slightly shifted my hand, and he was already so terrified that he started crying and begging for forgiveness. By the time I pulled out a cigarette, he had confessed everything. I just saw you drinking alone all the time. I thought you were pathetic. I just wanted to help. Actually, I wanted to marry you. After all, nobody wants you. I was just being kind. Perhaps because I didn't react, he decided to risk everything. You really are exactly what they say. A cold-blooded monster. Your mother was right not to want you. You're the one who killed her, too. Hearing that was truly irritating. I held my lit cigarette and crouched in front of him. I looked down at this pathetic little creature and smiled softly. Go to hell. I often have nightmares. I see my mother crying again. I see Silas White locking himself in a sea of flames, refusing to leave. I cannot sleep. I walked aimlessly through the streets, searching for a bus stop where I could sit down. I swallowed a sedative. I had heard rumors lately about a criminal who stalked the streets at night, specifically targeting people traveling alone. I hugged my arms tight and slowly closed my eyes. I don't know how much time passed before a slight commotion reached my ears. It had started to rain. I opened my eyes. My gaze fell upon a yellow umbrella held over my head. Oh, you're awake. The person on the bench next to me hadn't moved an inch. The owner of the umbrella was a young man. He was dressed very simply, but he was quite handsome. He handed the umbrella to me. My house is right up ahead, I don't need it. You take it. I didn't want to accept it and was about to refuse, but I suddenly sneezed. When I had left the house, I was only wearing a thin t-shirt. He awkwardly pushed the umbrella into my hands. You don't look well. Don't let yourself catch a cold. He took off his own jacket and draped it over my shoulders. Even though the fabric felt a bit itchy, I felt warm. Realistically, I should have turned him down right then. I was about to say something when he stood up firmly. He said a quick goodbye and told me he didn't need the jacket back. Then, like an idiot, he ran off into the pouring rain. An ID card fell out of the jacket pocket. I picked it up and held it under the glow of the street lamp to see. Name: Julian Chen. He was 5 years older than me. That was the first time we ever met.